Yeah, so I think the best way, and when I say the best, is really to not spend like 10 years and not really get anywhere in terms of the time investment, would be still get a at least a decent foundation in 2D, because until I saw progress in 2D and foundational just concept art, just you with a pencil, on a piece of paper, I didn't really see a big jump in concept design. So that's fundamental, and the reason being is because of the speed of iteration. It's like one of my friends told me this comparison when they had like 1 day of surfing and 1 day of snowboarding, and with surfing, like you go there, you wait for the wave, and then the wave comes in, and then you totally not make it, you like crash, and then it's like you wait for another wave, and somebody else comes in, so like 3 hours passes, and then you have like 3 attempts at the wave or something. So you didn't learn much because you didn't had actual trying time that much. And then you go snowboarding, you get on the snowboard, and if it's a big ass mountain, you have like, it takes some time to get down. By the time you're down, you already got way more time to actually learn how to snowboard and stay on the board and balance, versus like a week of surfing, for example. Like I'm not good at both, so I could be wrong with this analogy, but the basic idea here is that try to get as much quick iteration time as possible, to really learn the fundamentals, because you could spend literally days on modeling something, designing something, and then see this is total shit. And then there's time spent. I've been there so many times, and it's been one of the most just fundamentally frustrating things to experience in doing 3D design, because of the cost of the doing something. So finding a way to approach this and dissect in a way where you learn lessons faster. And when I say learn lessons, I really mean have a factual understanding of, okay, like, a good example would be certain proportions. And let's say you design a mech, and the proportions could be, let's say, good or not good, whatever. I'm not going to go into like the whole what makes them good or not, but then the lesson that you get from a trial, and then you have a certain, like, okay, you can make a note that this doesn't work and this works. Like, for example, this dividing something in half is not as dramatic as deciding dividing like a port, like a model, like a 1/3 to like 2/3, like a golden ratio. Because you could read stuff on what golden ratio means, but until you actually try it and you internalize the knowledge, that knowledge is not doing anything for you. So the internalizing the knowledge comes only through practice, and you need to find a way to make as much as dense and as sort of as many of those dense practices as possible. So that's why, like, learning to do it fast helps you to go through a really shitty phase faster, because like you can do it faster, you can fail faster. Having hotkeys, you can do it faster. You can go through that, and then I'm not saying to rush it. No. Like, please take your time. But I'm saying where you can speed things up and speed those trials and errors, it's totally worth doing that. But again, like fundamental 2D or sculpting, clay, anything that allows you to learn fundamentals of just art and quality, what makes good art. Mm-hmm. This will be always a good investment, whatever you want to do after this, whether it's robots or transportation design, anything. You need to get those hours, and eventually, like, essentially, it's still going to be this time that you can't really skip that. Whatever that is, like, 5 to 10 years, it'll still be that. But there is a way to come out on the other side much better than if you don't do this kind of things consciously.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the speed, because the speed is something that you practice to like get faster, so you can make mistakes. Like, but it all comes down to like practicing, and like you've done hundreds and that, like, different hundreds of things of the same thing that you've done, that you do right now, right? It's just more of a matter of like you getting better, and you can start visualizing things, as you go.
Yeah, and I feel like there's also this element where I've seen this in the past, and is that you give a certain advice and people take it to heart too much, like it's a rule you don't break. And I think this is also a mistake. You want to be self-aware, and being always grounded in reality. You are like, okay, am I going too fast? Should I take some time to reflect? What exactly am I doing? This is also important. So the self-awareness is also an essential skill, to know where you stand. Like, okay, where am I doing? What's the goal here? What's the sort of long-term goal? Right. And deconstruct and like try to really dissect. Like, the thing that really helped me is to really dissect everything to the point where every little piece I can understand this individually. And then if I don't understand something big, I try to deconstruct it again and see like, is there one thing that's missing? So taking this analytical approach, taking notes, like I always take, when I make a design, I always make a list of notes of things that I understand about it, things I want to do, things I don't understand. Like trying to really find a way to organize your thoughts in a way that promotes your self-awareness is really, really useful.
That kind of pings back to this one question here that Jay is asking, like, how do you know when you spend too much time on something? Like, do you have a kind of a strict rule or a way to like give yourself to figure out a technique, or is it just a feeling that you've hit some kind of a wall?
I don't have a strict rule. I think this is all individual. You want to build an intuition by overdoing certain things. It's like, was a documentary on the free diving where like in 60s they thought it was like you can't really dive deeper than 40 meters deep or something, and then every like I think 5 to 10 years they were break records adding like another 30 meters to it or something, to the point where it's like eventually it's like 200 meters. So no one really knows where the limit is. No one really knows how much is too much. The question is really, what's your goal? Because if your goal is to prepare yourself for the industry, and then you need to be clear what kind of industry we're talking about, what kind of position in this industry. Like you need some kind of reference point. When I was approaching concept design, to me it was this crazy fear of how in the hell can you ever compete with the 2D concept art, because you need to be just as good quality wise, but then you also need to do this in 3D. But then you don't really need to pose the question this way, because there is benefits to both. Like 2D art is not going anywhere, the 3D art is not going anywhere. So there is no need to sort of over dramatize things this way. Like as long as you learn fundamentals and you keep putting the healthy pressure on yourself, I feel like the good example, not the good example, but good practice is to be whatever you do, when you don't know how long it takes, just record the time. Like, I mean, like make a mark of like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do this thing. I have no clue. And it's just straight up budgeting. Like you start a new department, new project, you don't know how much it's going to cost. And then you need to have some kind of record of that for the future reference. And I did the same thing. As soon as you start doing the same thing with art, and it started to become a little bit easier to navigate. You spend, let's say, on this phase design, you spend, let's say, okay, I spent this 2 hours on this. Okay, well, I know this takes me 2 hours. And then, so that way, when you spend, let's say, 6 hours and you get something that is 3 times better, you're like, okay, nice. So I see a certain scale of progression. But then because nothing really is linear, then let's say you spend 2 weeks on something, then it becomes, okay, this is clearly too much. But then it's always the question is like, too much relative to what exactly? Because what if your goal is to come up with something just something that wasn't done before, that you don't even know what it is, that there is 90% of the time is R&D and search for something. Like you need to be aware of that, which part. And again, like I think this is all boils down to have the self-awareness, which stage you're in. Because I remember I was still a wizard at the time. I was doing this personal artwork that I think it was the longest personal artwork that I spent on, and I think I never finished it and I never published it. It was like 3 months of doing something that I ended up hating. And I remember that it was one of those things where the R&D on that thing was more than the work itself. Mm-hmm. It was not. I didn't have a clear goal. So the clarity is really the key. You want to have a clear goal, what you're trying to achieve, and you want to have a metric around this, where you can evaluate yourself, like evaluate your own performance, whether how well you are on the track of achieving that goal. So it's like, okay, you have a project, then you need to split this in micro milestones for this. Even if the project is, let's say, something that takes you 2 days, make micro milestones, meaning it's like before lunch, I need to do this, before that. And if every time when you're super off, like when it's so off, they're like, wow, I thought I'll do it in 2 hours, but it took me 2 years. And then you need to reevaluate the whole system. Okay, something's definitely not right. And then you need to get like a whole sort of, okay, let's look at everything. Something's definitely not right, because I'm so off in my estimates. Then like I'm clearly I'm not matching my expectations with reality, and then something else. So you need to sort of reevaluate everything again.